So I want to thank our guest speakers for attending. I want to thank our students for attending. This whole event came together pretty organically. We had sent a student survey out to the students, and through that survey we tried to target what are the employer organizations that students are interested in hearing from, and here they are. So all of our organizations that are represented here today were pretty high on the list, and it's great to have familiar faces and a lot of new faces joining us at this event. I hope you guys have a chance to network with your peers and your counterparts across the planning landscape, across the sustainable landscape. And I guess kick it off. We're going to run things pretty informally. So we're running this sort of as a pitch. So this is an opportunity for you to come up here, promote your organization, give us a sense of the lay of the land, and this is in 5 minutes. Actually, I'm going to give you 6. We're going to extend it a little bit.
I am a development planner for the city. When new projects come in, I work with the developers, the community, ultimately take the project to public hearing, and then most of the time see it through the construction process as well.
And I'm the city's energy manager, and I operate our Office of Energy Management. I think we're going to talk a little bit more broadly about kind of sustainability in the city, and then I'll kind of go into a little bit more about what I do, because I think that has some relevance here. I will say, though, for the record, I am not an official planner. I classically trained as an engineer, but a lot of my work does delve into the development, or the planning and development space, and I'll speak to that here in a moment.
And I am a trained planner, and professionally as well. And typically I would say that the ability to speak to planners and speak to engineers and speak to citizens are some of the most important things we do. You have to be able to speak in a very technical way about processes, and then also dial it down to someone who is coming in off the street and says, I hear green is good, what does that mean?
A little bit about the city, just in the sustainability space. We're kind of, several years back, our city council and residents and community undertook a process called, twofold. Part of this Eco City Alexandria. It's really a broad-based sustainability framework that we kind of operate within, and as a result, kind of produced a variety of different planning documents. In local government and government generally, like to plan a lot, write a lot of documents, reports that really lay groundwork and kind of a pathway forward. All that said, we operate within this Eco City Alexandria and its variety of plans, really to, and then ultimately, as I will discuss in a moment, kind of some of our green building programs, kind of put us on a pathway to really build in, I think, a lot of what you're studying, that is build a sustainable, all that means, community, and do so that balances kind of the environmental stewardship, balances the economic prosperity and kind of the social conditions of our community as a whole. One of the aspects that we do have here, just that's really relevant to the planning process and drives a lot of our neighborhood development, is kind of the framework of our green building policy that outlines kind of what we expect with regards to when we pursue new development, and that includes kind of, you can speak to it more specifically, but that policy kind of dictates what.
Sure. So within the state of Virginia, jurisdictions have sort of a limited amount of what they can do. And one of the things that happens is that if a power is not explicitly granted by the state, you have to find a little bit of a workaround. So for the city of Alexandria, the green building policy is our workaround. The majority of projects that come through the city require some sort of a special review. Either they need a parking reduction, or they want to go a little taller than they might be able to otherwise, put in a few more units. That takes them through the public hearing process, and so one of the trade-offs that we require for that is to participate in the green building process. On a basic level, what that means is that non-residential construction needs to be built to at least a LEED Silver standard. New residential construction is LEED certified. We do allow people to use alternate programs as well. A lot of our smaller residential projects use green globes, programs like that. And so that is built into the conditions of approval that they work with, and then they are required to comply with that.
I'm going to talk a little bit, going to go on some notes there right here, particularly about what I do, which I think is a little bit of an outlier than what you may hear from a variety of other speakers today. So, take a little bit of liberty here. So I operate our city's Office of Energy Management, and it's really a broad-based program, and the way I like to say it in kind of really short, quick, layman's terms is, if it deals with energy and kind of that subcomponent of the sustainability space, I'm probably doing something with it. I'm probably involved in the conversation or managing some part of it in some way. So that really expands the breadth of kind of the world, if you will. I handle everything from the mundane, managing all the city's utility bills and reporting out on that, managing the costs, procuring our utilities, performing all the kind of basic to really advanced analytics on understanding how we're using energy and energy resources. Responsible for deploying energy efficiency and renewable energy systems into our city operations and our vehicles and our fleet. Work kind of beyond that. The engagement with the community on the energy conversation. It's everything from dealing with how do we communicate climate change mitigation and adaptation, to conducting our greenhouse gas inventory, to providing education and workshop on how to implement energy efficiency measures in your household or your small business. And beyond that, really start to delve into kind of the planning conversation, dealing with our planning department. We're looking at neighborhoods. How do we implement green building policy? How do we look to push developers to implement high-performing buildings within whatever development project they may be pursuing? So involved in the planning process, the conversation there. Interestingly also, and I say all this just to kind of give you the breadth. I think many of you are thinking, well, I'm going to be a planner, but there's the sustainability world is really broad, and there's so much opportunity, and so many directions you can go. Deal a lot now with energy security issues and how that relates to sustainability and climate change. Dealing with our grid and the regional grid here. How do we make it resilient as we have increasing severity of weather storms? We have increasing severity of terrorism threats. And how do we build systems, energy or built environment systems to handle that and to kind of be resilient against those types of things. And then finally, one of the areas I work in a lot is public utilities regulation, and that deals everywhere from site planning of kind of where we run electrical lines or water conveyance systems to kind of the policy options that we have to consider as a city, as a state, as a region, as a nation, with regards to kind of sustainability, energy, climate change, and involving kind of being an advocate on behalf of not only the city but our community kind of in that policy and regulatory space. Again, that's all to say that I think between the both of us, there's a lot of opportunity for you all to pursue. And I would encourage you just to look kind of not necessarily strictly at the planning process. I think it's extremely important, and we need talented, intellectually brilliant people focused on that, which I assume you all are. But there's a lot of different things from operational to planning that one can get involved in. Sorry, that was a lot of words and I complicated it, but
That's okay.
I think one of the questions that was brought up was hiring. It's kind of always difficult in the public sector, particularly local government. What I will say is, so we have to have kind of approval from our city council. We won't go there, but that said, I do have, personally, I have a position upon approval that I'll be offering up this summer. More of a technically oriented position. However, I think, if you're talented, you understand the conversation of energy, sustainability, climate change, and you can be kind of trained in some of these operational components, that you bring kind of that planning or background or competency. Certainly, I enjoy kind of hearing from you and seeing if you'd be kind of a good fit for our team. I don't know about planning and zoning and.
Within planning, nothing right now, but within the department, there's the zoning staff, neighborhood planning, which does more long-term planning, development, which is current planning essentially. We have historic preservation, and there tends to be a lot of opportunity within those. So for most jurisdictions, just keep up on the websites. The American Planning Association keeps a pretty comprehensive list. Plan Edison keeps a pretty comprehensive list as well. But if there's a jurisdiction or a couple that you're interested in, just following up. And then also, most of the jurisdictions in the area that I've spoken with are very welcoming to have people come in, take a tour of the office, get a feel of the office culture, and we're always looking for feedback, so feel free to drop by.
Another question I was asked about kind of your regional partnerships. Who do you engage with? In my world, engage a lot with our regional localities. So I deal a lot with my peers in Arlington, the district, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, et cetera. A lot of kind of regional policy discussions to regional kind of project coordination and collaboration. Deal with the federal government, the military, pretty regularly. I mean, our day-to-day colleagues, and interesting thing about cities, we've gone through an exercise recently where we kind of looked at our organization. And the interesting thing about cities is that we're a conglomerate of about 400 different sub-businesses, kind of little businesses all operating at one, from a business that collects trash to a business that plans, a business that manages our finances to manages their energy. And so that's really a lot of, again, point out, deal with a lot of different people, converse in a lot of different languages, whether it be technical or otherwise. Other partners, trying to think of professional organizations certainly that we engage with, I think, on a regular basis from just comment and professional experience, consultancies, and certainly utilize their skill sets and kind of breadth of knowledge to supplement city staff and their expertise. Others that we engage with?
I only talk to other planners. Within the city, we typically, any new project that comes in, we are working with our Department of Transportation and Environmental Services. So, is there a road affected? Is there, how is the sewer going to work on this project? Is it a greenfield site that's being built over? How are they going to meet their canopy coverage? We have 2 registered historic districts in the city, so is it something that's going on in there? Do we need to work with the Board of Architecture review? We work with our Office of Code Administration to make sure that things are going to be built properly. So every project requires a lot of collaboration, and every time something gets constructed, it's the result of a lot of different departments' work. I think we're in our final thoughts.
Yeah, I guess maybe you're not asking for it, or soliciting it, but I'll give you some of my opinions on career development and kind of what I've learned over time. I think be a lifelong learner is one thing, and that aids in kind of having the ability to discuss, converse on a variety of different levels and in different kind of professional languages. So not only pursue planning as kind of your core focus, but broaden yourself out to other other disciplines. Understand. I heard the duck. I think that's one. 2 is I guess be talented. In challenged economic times as we are, people are looking for talented people. And so to be to exhibit talent, whatever that may mean, is really important because we as an organization don't want to hire people that we're going to have to babysit or have to foster beyond what we should. So be talented, be competent, and exhibit that to your employers and just kind of step up.
Really well. So I run our research program at DDOT. We're a really unique place in that we're both a city and a state here in the district, and so on the transportation side we receive funding as a state entity because there is no state above us to administer that. So every state has a research program, therefore DDOT has a research program. It's the smallest in the country, but nonetheless we have it. And I am trained as a planner. I have my certification AICP. Which I got in part because I don't tend to actually work in things that are directly planning, but I want the world to know that I actually have that competency and that you can ask me questions about planning and I might know the answer. And just to kind of, there's a variety of reasons, but so speaking more broadly about the agency, we do everything, we are the public space regulators. We control everything almost from building line to building line. The sidewalks are ours, the street trees are ours, anything that happens on the streets, the bike lanes, all of the major construction projects in terms of transportation. We also run some transit systems, but the Capital Bike Share, which is the person that was supposed to come, and the circulator buses, as well as hopefully very soon the streetcar. And I cannot tell you when it's going to start running because I don't know why. You can get Stacy over here and help me with that answer. So it's a really broad and diverse agency, and we actually have planners kind of all throughout. I'm not the only person who is a planner but isn't actually doing kind of normal planning work in that sense. We do actually have a whole planning branch. I sit in that group. They do the development review side from the transportation perspective. They do the long-range transportation planning, neighborhood transportation planning, and then our bike ped group has several planners in it. But then there's also folks over on our transit side that are planners. There's the person who's in policy with me. I sit next to policy people there. Someone there is a planner. I'm in research, and then they're just kind of scattered throughout as well. So I'd say that transportation's got a broad range, and I have learned an awful lot, speaking of learning as you go. I can tell you all about permeable pavement testing acceptance standards. Permeable pavements are great, but you have to get your engineers to actually say that they have put them in properly, and they don't necessarily have they don't know what, pavement has a modulus of rupture. I don't know if everybody knew that. Concrete, you break the beams. I have not watched the process done, but rupture. So the things you can learn is working not quite in the traditional planning sectors. And it's been really interesting to see that broad range of activities. Groups that we work with, I think, are everybody across the board that you would normally interact with in the planning process. So citizens and community meetings, a lot of interaction with the council, particularly during silly season, which is right now because they all want something built right there in their community and fixed. We do parking, so like anybody and everybody hates us. We don't enforce the parking usually. We do the policy and the meters. But who else do we interact with? A lot of work with COG, the Council of Governments, because they are the oversight body in some ways for the region, and they do the regional plan. I personally interact a lot with the Transportation Research Board, with other state departments of transportation who also, in their research programs, and bringing in outside research into the agency to try and make it more innovative, and by the same token, pushing out the good work that we're doing and trying to push our message out. I feel like I'm missing portions of what I was supposed to talk about. Who we work with, what I do, what did I miss?
Technical capacities?
Oh, I'm not sure I'm actually qualified for my job, but I think it's a broad range of interests. Coming into transportation, it definitely helps to, if you're in the DOT, it helps to know about just the basics of transportation planning. But I think everybody who's walked in didn't necessarily know a great deal about it. I think people doing transit planning, everyone I've ever talked to has kind of learned transit planning on the job. You don't need a service planner you can meet service planners who are planners, but they didn't go to school to be a service planner. That's a very different type of job. And most of our development review and long-range planners, I mean, they have the standard skills, but it's a lot of learning how to be a very good communicator with the public. And then working very professionally with developers to try and guide them in the direction you want them to go without pushing any buttons too far wrong, because that's usually when you get the call from the council member that says that you will not be doing it that way. I thankfully never really have to deal with those because I'm in a corner that no one sees. But we are doing really good things in research at DDOT. And I will speak just because I'm very proud of that. We've got a great project right now on trip and parking generation. And if there's people that want to do that as like a class project at some point, talk to me. But we do, things we have. Intern program. My research program runs an intern program during the summer. And some continue into the semester. Megan here is one of our summer interns who continued on as a semester intern. So she can answer lots of questions about what exactly we do, but that call is going out very shortly. I expect to see it up on Monday. And Howard University administers the program for us, but it is in fact the department's program. I don't have a lot of really kind of sustainability-oriented ones this year. Well, I'll have to think about that. But nothing that is like, I don't think I have any that are, except for a freight planning one with the truck route, nobody within planning, but that's the one within planning. The rest are kind of throughout the agency, but there's some really interesting work on signs and coordination with developers on long-range developments that the engineering folks are doing, but I really think a planner would be a good fit with as well. So if you talk to me, I can certainly take notes.
Because we do a lot of stuff at DC Office of Planning. We're involved in a lot of different planning areas, and we are involved in involved in planning at a lot of different scales. So we do planning at the neighborhood scale, at corridors for districts, for our public facilities, for parks, open spaces, and just individual sites. We analyze urban design issues, land use issues, historic preservation issues. We do a lot of historic resources research, community visioning. We disseminate a lot of spatial data, GIS data, US Census data. So I think the best way to organize this is just to talk about the different divisions and what each one does. I think sustainability is something that runs through all of these divisions, but the citywide planning division is sort of the large-scale planning effort, and they look at the district from like the 50,000 foot height. And so they're responsible for the comprehensive plan, and if you're interested in that kind of thing, it's a sort of a long-range policy document, 20-year document that's updated periodically. And there's elements of involving transportation, involving land use, involving the environment. So it's as I said, it's more of a policy-oriented division. But they also looked at recently the Height Act and the height of the buildings in the district and whether the 130-foot height is appropriate or not, and made a recommendation. And also, looking at the streetcar issue and transportation. So the neighborhood planners are a little bit more fine-grained, and they're looking more at the small area plans, and what that means is basically more on the community level. And so, for example, there's a plan going on in Southwest DC. I don't know if any of you saw that. There's a groundbreaking for the wharf project on the waterfront, which is very exciting. And so they look at issues of economic development, of urban design, but more at the fine-grained community level. And each of the planners on that division are assigned a different ward. And so they get to know the elected officials from that ward. They get to know the ANCs, the residents very well. Revitalization and design is more sort of physical planning oriented, and they look at quality design, look at issues of sustainability. We have a sustainability planner who actually works in that division. And they look at parks and open space, stormwater issues, and public space, looking at parks and rec issues. There's a Play DC movement or study going on at the moment, and that's looking at it's a comprehensive look at all the different open space in the district. And there's a Sustainable DC plan. I brought some samples for you guys if you're interested, and that looks at the district with our partners and other agencies. It's a kind of a look at the district from a sustainable perspective and looking at it from, issues of energy, food, of transportation, economic development, you name it, it's all in here. So the Development Review Division, that's the division I work in, and we review large and small scale projects, everything from a large scale PUD, which is basically a project that's 15,000 square feet or larger, and down to someone who wants to put in a deck and it doesn't conform to the zoning. So for the PUDs, we work a lot with the Zoning Commission, the large scale projects, and then for the small scale projects, we work for the Board of Zoning Adjustment. And we're also engaged in the ZRR process, which is, ZRR is Zoning Regulations Review, and it's basically rewriting the entire zoning code. And the code, we're updating the code. I wouldn't want to say rewrite. The code is essentially from 1958, and so it's been amended probably 1,000 times at this point. So it's an effort really to reorganize the code. And one of the initiatives in the code is called the Green Area Ratio, which is essentially, it's sort of, you can think of it like LEED. It's a scorecard for individual sites, and you get points for different things, points for trees, points for stormwater, for pervious surface. So that's one thing. And then we also have a new pervious surface requirement for residential properties, which is kind of exciting, and that's the first time that we've done that. Partner organizations, we work a lot with DDOT, and we work with the District Department of the Environment. As far as the culture, I think it's a really collaborative place to work, and really I enjoy that aspect the most. I think if you're interested in any type of plan, you can become involved in it, and if you take the initiative, you can you can pursue whatever you're interested in, whatever you're passionate about. And if I just have 1 second about career advice, I would say, it's a tough environment right now out there, but I think maybe you take that first job or a job that you're not quite thrilled with, but I think that you always maintain whatever your passion is, and if you have to, in your spare time, you have to find your skills in a certain area, or just become involved in something that you're interested in. And for me, it was urban design, so I started getting involved with the GW Landscape Design Program and other design, doing design competitions and just whatever it is, just to kind of keep your passion going and don't be put
We're a
into a
consulting
box.
firm, international. We have over 200 locations, and I think I get the best of both worlds because I work in a project office and there are 20 of us, but I get the perks of being in a big company. They help pay for school. They send you to various conferences for career opportunities. But anyway, so we do transportation planning in my office. We are a project office for the DC streetcar. So almost all 20 of us were hired specifically for the DC streetcar program. We will be transitioning into other projects as they come up. But for right now, I spend 100% of my time on the streetcar. It's very, very interesting. And because I'm part of such a small office, I get to have my hands in every part of it. So I work a lot with the public. Half my role is public outreach specialist, and so for DC it's really important to make sure that the public is on board with anything that they do now. It's all we hear about, and I think it's a really good idea because the public has not been quite so happy in the past. So I spend a lot of time translating our work into public speak, making boards for meetings and presentations. So that's a really important skill that everyone should have if they want to go into planning, because I spend time with planning software every single day, whether it's GIS, Adobe Suite, things like that. So that is definitely something that is very high in demand that I didn't necessarily know before I got into this role. So you also have to be a quick learner. But another thing that I do is I write technical reports. So writing skills or editing skills are very important, and they are sought out in the office because not everyone can be a good editor, and it's actually rarer than I expected, so people will throw that stuff at you. So be ready for that if you go into this kind of role. So technology is definitely GIS. I didn't know much about it, so I've had to kind of be a self-learner, but definitely take whatever classes here you can that have GIS in there, because one of our roles is to help plan which streets the streetcars are going to go on, and so I'm making maps every day. We work on the system, the entire system, so broad maps, but then I also work on just one single line, so we have to go into a lot of more detail, and we're very data oriented. And and so hiring, we unfortunately aren't really hiring much in the DC area because the streetcar program's already kind of been going on for a while. But like I said, we have over 200 offices, and I know that a lot of people tend to leave where they are after graduation. So we all communicate very frequently with people in other offices. So if there's somewhere you want to move to, for example, I contacted someone in Chicago for actually someone I went to school with here, and because they're trying to move to Chicago. So if you're interested in any of that kind of stuff, let me know. I skipped who we work with. So I work a lot with the public. Like I said, it's very important to be, happy and friendly all the time. So that's something that everyone needs to work on. But I also work with a lot of other consulting firms. And so really networking is key. That's how I got my job. I didn't apply to it. I actually knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who recommended me. And I didn't have a lot of planning experience before that because I was in the middle of school. So network as often as you can. I did Sustainable DC when I first moved here, and that person actually works for DDOT, which is our client, and they helped me get my job. And one of my colleagues knew another colleague who got me in the door. So I recommend getting involved in everything that you can, even if you're tired, even if you want to go home, go to those events. And also another thing I'm going to plug, just because it has to do with networking, is I am on the board of Women in Transportation and in charge of the mentorship program. So for the women out there, if you are graduating by this next spring or you're already a working professional, we are accepting applications right now for
NATO, not NATO with a T. That's a question I've gotten before. What's a planner doing working at NATO? So I've learned to enunciate the D very clearly. We are an association of regional planning and economic development councils around the country. So our members go by different names depending on where they are. Some of them are councils of government, some are regional planning commissions, some are economic development districts, but basically they are all multi-county entities that work with the communities within their boundaries on a whole range of issues, from economic and workforce development to transportation, to sustainable community development, to disaster recovery, to small business development. So really a broad range of issues depending on where they are. So we, as an organization, our focus is to kind of build their capacity to do their jobs better. So as a planner working at NATO, I don't actually do planning myself, but I work with planners and with other staff of these regional organizations to make sure that they're really on top of best practices that are going on around the country and that they're networked with each other. So we do that work in a couple of different ways. We have a legislative team that educates our members on what's going on the Hill related to their issues. A lot of our members are in rural communities or small metro areas. So our ledge team often focuses on rural development programs and really helps our members track things that are happening in Congress and helps them become better advocates themselves for the things that they're interested in. I work for the Research Foundation side of the organization. So we are a 501c3. The ledge team is a 501c4. So we are the ones who really do a lot of that training and capacity building of our member organizations. And we do that through workshops and conferences and more intensive technical assistance projects with our members and with other regional organizations around the country. So for instance, to give you a couple of examples of topics that we've been providing capacity building on recently, I manage our disaster resilience program at NATO. So about a month ago, we did a training workshop for a region in Western New York on how to better engage the economic development and the business community in conversations they were having about flood resilience and hazard mitigation. I also work on our Sustainable Communities program. So we often provide training and capacity building on how to strengthen regional planning for sustainable community development and smart growth, and then how to work with the communities within your regions to implement those projects. Other things I've been working on lately, we are going to be providing training coming up on the concept of economic resilience and how a region can equip itself to be prepared for not just natural disasters, but also the downturn of a big industry sector that they may be heavily reliant on. For instance, we've been having conversations with a bunch of communities in Appalachia about how to plan for the downturn in the coal industry and other types of economic shocks that may come at you as a region. It's a great place to work. I was trying to think of a couple things I could say to you really quickly about what are the challenges of working at NATO and what are the kind of rewarding parts of it. And I guess one of the challenges is that is coming up with what we can do to support the missions and the work of our member organizations in a meaningful way that really moves the ball forward for them when we aren't actually located there. You know, I'm not actually a planner with the Southern Tier East Regional Planning and Development Board, but I have to learn as much as I can really quickly about the issues that are facing them, and get a good enough understanding that I can really deliver something that's going to be meaningful to them and not just some workshop that happens, you know, and then everyone forgets about it. Highlights are, I think, the opportunity to work kind of in this space between federal and state and local policy, because all of those things are so important for how development happens in communities, and how you know, environmental issues and quality of life and the economy, and so it's really interesting, I think, to kind of be in a place where you can put all the puzzle pieces together between all those different levels of policy and help kind of make sense of it all and support good work on the ground. And then the second rewarding part, I would say, is that it's neat to work with folks who are working in rural places and small cities on sustainability issues particularly, because I feel like I'm lucky in that I'm not just preaching to the choir all the time. I get to work with people who maybe are just starting to learn about some of the issues that I'm sure you all are studying, and that are really hungry to learn more, and there's a lot of opportunity there to advocate for better planning practices, I think. So we are not hiring right now. Unfortunately, we don't have any positions open, but we sometimes have grad fellow positions open, which are targeted at people who are either in grad school or just finishing it. So I would say watch our website for those. Our website is nato.org, and it has lots of more information about what we do. And I'm happy to talk more and have coffee anytime, and that would be my piece of career advice is, I think someone else already said this, don't be afraid to ask people to meet up with you, have coffee, and just tell you more about what they do, because people are really nice.
Montgomery County Planning Department, and we do all the things that you've heard about planners do. I started as an architect, worked as an architect for a few years, and then switched to planning. And that experience has helped me. I also, because of that experience, I act as the urban designer for my team also. I need that experience also. In terms of Montgomery County, just north of the district, has all kinds of areas. It has urban areas, Silver Spring, Bethesda, middle belt, if you look at it, is suburban becoming more urban, and then the whole northern area is what we call ag reserve, which is a preservation area and everything. So in that range, you'll have every kind of opportunity of any kind of planning. This is just one example that I'm circulating. Take a look at it. Sustainability has always been a big goal for Montgomery County. I understand that these days it's the buzzword. Everybody wants to do sustainable planning. One of our commissioners said, I think what she said, this is about 5 years back when smart growth was the buzzword. So she said, we have been doing smart growth all around. We want to do very smart. We want the smartest growth ever. That's what we want to do. That should be our goal. So in terms of sustainability planning, it permeates almost every discipline, every kind of work that you do. Without going into very specific, you'll have very specific goals and objectives that specifically target environmental planning. We have probably the most progressive, from the development side point of view, more restrictive laws and regulations. There are certain areas from steep slopes to stream valley buffers to 100-year floodplains to rare, threatened and endangered species, habitat, forest versus forest versus not a forest. So very environmentally focused planning to transportation to urban design. We look at everything that has to be sustainable. Our recent initiative, and the whole department was organized along those lines, is that all development in the county should be focused into more transit-oriented areas. That means we are looking at our zoning to say, if new development is happening, it should happen in transit-oriented areas. People can take more transit instead of driving. Not that we're going to eliminate driving, but that's what we should encourage. We work with state, for example. They had an initiative about, I forgot the name, about how they called it, where state is looking at, it'll come to me in a second, I'll mention it to you, that development should be focused from the government side into areas where it's more appropriate to be located, again, from a smart growth point of view. And they came over the map and everything, and they looked at us, and most of the time they come to us and say, well, you guys are already way ahead of us, that's fine, we just do that. We have a council, county council. Somebody on the Virginia side mentioned that they can do very little. On the Maryland side, we do a lot. County council has the full authority to create our own land use regulations and everything. We do work with the state Department of Natural Resources, Maryland State of Highways, Maryland Department of Planning. But mostly, we are very independent in terms of within the county as to what kind of planning we do. And we are supported very much by our county council, who is very liberal and very environment-oriented, sustainable development, smart growth all along. I think recently they're looking at a bill, for example, to say all commercial development above a certain size has to be LEED silver. About 5 years ago, they said it has to be just LEED. All the government buildings, county buildings, have to be LEED silver. So that's the kind of environment we are in. We have the organization, Montgomery County Planning Department, is part of what we call Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, very long name. The commission is composed of two counties, Montgomery County and Prince George's County. It was created way back in 1928 without going into the history. So commission is like the holding company, and underneath that there are these two counties, Montgomery County and Prince George's County. And both of those counties, departments of planning and parks departments are part of that organization. Planning department itself is about 140 to 150 people. Every kind of discipline, from researchers to economic specialists to environmental specialists to transportation to architects, are here. My own team has about, an environmental planner, a transportation planner, a land use planner. We have a zoning expert. I used to do long-term planning. Recently I switched. I was given the responsibility to do regulatory planning. So now we're looking at active development projects that come in. This is where planning happens at the ground level. You do have some opportunity to do mostly big policy stuff also. When you do, for example, if you're doing the functional planning, the whole county is divided into about 26 geographic areas. Each area has a master plan. So the long-term planning is what you do master planning. Every master plan is about 20 years of that. How much development, where is it appropriate, what kind of areas to be protected, what kind of development should happen where, and how all of that development is going to be supported, what kind of infrastructure. Recently the county has passed what we call a bus rapid transit plan for the entire county. That's going to go into effect. It's going to take 50 years to implement that, but this is the first step. We're starting to do that. In terms of organization, what you need to do, like I said, if you're interested in that kind of environment, one thing you have to do as a planner, at least in our kind of environment, you have to work with a team. There are very few positions that you will be left alone and you'll do on your own. You have to work with a team. And you better like it, because otherwise you'll be miserable and then you're going to do that. The second thing from my own experience I would say is, if you want to be a good planner, it probably applies to all professions, but at least please learn to write. In the planning, I teach some courses at the University of Maryland, and that's what I tell my students. If you don't have an opportunity, engineers and architects are the worst writers, really the worst writers, because architects think that they just got to do design. But we're always salesmen. You're always selling. You're selling to the council, you're selling to the planning board, you're sitting across from the developer, you're trying to sell your idea to the developer. Even within your own team, you'll have conflicts, you're selling that. But in the end, you'll have to write. And again, learn to write, take some classes, this is your opportunity. It'll help you a lot in your career. Did I leave anything out or quick? And we're always hiring. We're a large organization. Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission.org. If you go, there's a job bulletin. Like I said, our planning department on Montgomery County alone is about 140 people. Our parks department is probably in a couple of thousand. Prince George's County even bigger. So any kind of planners will find some kind of place in there. And it's a great organization to work for. Like I said, very diverse experience. From urban to rural to suburban and everything.
So I'm on the other end of the consulting spectrum. We do not have 200 offices. We have about 60 people. So we are a multimodal transportation planning, engineering, and design firm based here in Silver Spring is our main office. It's also about half of our employees. We have approximately 30 employees in this office, and we've got about approaching 60 employees company-wide. Our offices work somewhat regionally, but because we're the biggest and the original office, we tend to work on the projects where we don't have offices yet in the country. So right now, for instance, we're working on a regional bike and ped plan for the Tulsa region. I'm also working on some work in Denver. We have an office out there now, but it's only 2 people, so there's that. And we are growing because there are more places that are recognizing that having a walkable and bikeable community is something that their residents want. And so we are seeing, projects in places like Tulsa or I don't know where else we're working that is, maybe a little bit surprising. We do a lot of work in the region. We're actually working for all of the jurisdictions that are represented here today. We are working on the Capitol Crescent Trail and numerous other projects in Montgomery County. We're doing a bunch of design work in Alexandria, working on the South Capitol Street Bridge right now in DC. So our office, as planners, we work at a lot of different scales. We work all the way from a corridor plan to a city or town-wide plan, county scale, regional, and we actually are working on a number of statewide bicycle plans right now and some bicycle and pedestrian plans. We also end up doing some research as people have ideas and as the interest is there from funding institutions at the federal level. We'll work on things for NCHRP, National Cooperative Highway Research Program. I'm looking at Stephanie. So we've got a couple of research projects going right now within the firm as well. And we're a consulting firm, so you want to stay busy all the time, and we hire based on how much work we have. So it's been really exciting to step into that role. My professional experience before planning graduate school was with some really, what I would say, stodgy and large and old institutions, both on the nonprofit and the institutional side. As a graduate student, I interned with HUD here in the Office of Sustainable Housing and Communities. Fantastic experience, great people, and it really helped me realize that I wanted to be working at the ground level. So I think that that's a very important consideration when you're looking forward to what the next job or the first job is in planning. Think about scale, think about where you want to have your fingers touching things, or if you want to have your fingers touching way more things just at that 40,000 foot level. So as a consultant, we work all over the place, which is really helpful because I'm constantly learning about how different communities operate. We work for departments of transportation, we work for departments of planning, departments of public works. I'm constantly having to ask questions of my clients about how their city functions. Who's the person who makes the decisions about this thing? How does the council actually impact things? Does the mayor have more power here? Who are you going to need to make your arguments to? So having the skill of figuring out the right questions to ask, I've found is a really important one that you need to develop as a planner, especially as a consultant, because you're going to be asking those questions every time you start a project, and the answer is always different. We, as planners, take advantage of probably every skill that I learned in grad school. GIS, definitely really important. I did a whole lot of GIS stuff in grad school. Adobe Creative Suite. Writing has been said, it's really important. Public presentation, making sure that you can get up in front of a group of 200 people and be okay with that. be okay with talking to that crazy bike guy who exists in every city. Often he looks very similar. It's never a crazy bike lady, and I can say that as like verging on being a crazy bike lady. And honestly, you know, like that's the skill you don't learn in school. That's the kind of thing that you just need to cultivate over time. Do it through networking. Do it through going to events. I got my job also through networking. I went to school on the West Coast. Stephanie and I both went to UC Berkeley, but I knew I wanted to come back east. I did a 3-week East Coast tour the summer after I graduated from school. I spent a week here, a week in Philly, and a week in Boston. And I probably met with 35 people over that course of time. So don't hesitate to reach out to folks. Working in consulting is a little bit, or at least in our firm, is a little bit different because as a planner, I take advantage of all my planning skills, but I also interact daily with engineers and landscape architects, and I'm learning from them all the time. So I don't know if you guys have or have had the opportunity to interact with your landscape design program here, but having a fluency in design I've found is really important for me, and being open to learning about that stuff, whether it's permeable pavement, which thankfully I've not really had to get into yet, but I can talk to you about, you know, lane widths. You know, there are some communities are okay with 10-foot lanes, some communities are not okay with 10-foot lanes, some transit agencies are really not okay with 10-foot lanes. So having the ability to learn with every project that you're doing, I think, is really important. And I think our company culture is really healthy. We work extremely collaboratively. Working in teams is something that you're going to do throughout your time. We are hiring an intern, a planning intern in the DC office. This summer we're also hiring planning interns in a couple other offices in the country. The deadline was actually last week, but I've been told that if you send me an email that says that I'm from GW and you exactly follow our application instructions, that we will look at it. They're fairly specific. I've got them printed out here. I can give them to you. So that's it.
Thanks for having me here. I'm glad to speak with you all. And I also realize that I'm standing between you all and March Madness, so I'll try to be quick and maybe won't even get told by the duck that I need to leave. But I have some notes as well, so I'm going to go over just a little bit of what I do. I work for the U.S. Green Building Council. It's a private nonprofit that started off actually working strictly with buildings, and then realized that sustainable buildings, building them one at a time, was not a really productive way to promote sustainability, and so broadened our mission to look at sustainable communities, and with that provided some opportunities for planners and folks in the room. So I'm going to go over a little bit of the work that I do, kind of bullet point through some of the items you asked us to speak to, and then we'll have some chances to discuss later on. So with just a little bit of background on U.S. Green Building Council, we have a rating system that's called, or a rating product that's called LEED. And LEED is basically a checklist system that helps developers and architects and folks that are working on those types of projects understand and learn how they can make their projects more sustainable. Rating systems, we have various rating systems that focus on new construction, places that are already built or buildings that are already built and constructed, healthcare and all these specialties in terms of buildings. And then also there's a rating system that looks at the neighborhood scale, and that's the LEED for Neighborhood Development Rating System. Makes sense, hopefully, that would be the rating system. And so within that capacity, I work with that rating system. It has 3 credit categories. We have prerequisites and credits. Prerequisites obviously required, and credits are things that projects can apply to their particular context that makes sense to them, but they still need to gather and collect enough points that they've shown that they've met enough sustainability objectives to kind of call their project sustainable. So with the LEED rating system, LEED for Neighborhood Development Rating System, I work with the entire rating system, from smart location and linkage to neighborhood pattern and design, and a green building and infrastructure, sort of the credit categories that we collect all those components under. I work to help administer, develop, write new credits, make sure that the credits are being interpreted the right way, and you know, there's obviously so many different contexts that any project can come under, so help to make sure that projects that have special circumstances really are meeting the intent. All of our credits are governed by an intent that says, do this. This is a reason why we're saying this credit's important. And so there's always gray areas, and so we want to help to make sure that stays true to what the credit intent is. In addition to that, part of my work, I work with the location and planning, the location and transportation sub-credit category of all the other rating systems. All the other rating systems are a little bit different, and they have 6 credit categories that deal with things that are more specific to just inside the building, things that buildings need to control to be sustainable. So you can have materials and resources, indoor air quality issues, energy efficiency, but still the location and how people interact with your building, get to your building, how your building interacts with the street and with the surrounding areas. That's also very important at the building level. So there's a location and transportation building credit category. I work with all those credits as well. Doing similar work, making sure that we're keeping up with best practices. We've had a lot of speakers talk about best practices. I have to stay on top of that as well and make sure that what we're asking for is something that's going to be innovative and cutting edge and best practice, so that we're pulling the market along and helping bring about more sustainability with the decisions that those folks make. On top of that, we have technical advisory groups, as you can understand, especially writing something that's really a menu that's kind of broad on purpose and has a lot of options on purpose. Working at that level, there's no way that one person or even a team of people have 5 people that work on our team together, and just having that amount of expertise would be impossible for us to just keep up with everything. So we have a technical advisory group made up of experts that help us make these decisions. A variety of folks in a variety of different settings that have the experience that we need to help us understand what's going out there in the field and stay on top of the best practices that we try to promote. And then within our organization, not just looking at the lead side of things, which is the group that puts together the rating system and puts those resources together that I mentioned. We also have folks that work with advocacy. I have a colleague in advocacy that really focuses on things at this level, much like the NATO work that we discussed. Resiliency, so folks are looking at sort of the cutting edge of how the built environment interacts with ideas of resiliency and resilience, and how to help promote that as another consideration. And then we have a research team in our department as well. Folks that we work with obviously urban designers, planners, city officials, developers. Fred Dock was on our technical advisory group. So we work in different capacities, both at the technical advisory group level, where we have people that interact and give us feedback, but then also people that utilize the rating system. They still interact with us, they have questions, they want to promote the work that they've done, and so we have a lot of feedback and interaction that way. National and state policymakers, other nonprofit experts that we collaborate with, academia, affordable housing representatives and producers, a wide range of people to try to build this rating system that I talked about with the breadth of coverage that it provides. In terms of technical competencies that I bring to the table, not a lot, really. It's really a role where I function as a generalist, but I think as a lot of the other speakers said, if you're passionate about what you're doing and if you want to stay engaged, you have aspects of what you learned in planning school that you want to continue to apply. That's talking to me. I didn't beat the death, but you should be able to work and network and hone those skills outside of your work environment. So be passionate about that enough so that you want to get up and go to an all-day training session like I am tomorrow morning, where you're going to work on some of your technical development skills and engage in the software, Adobe, SketchUp, all those different things that you're probably learning in school right now and are probably much better than I am at, and that's why I'm going to this training session tomorrow. But I really see myself as a generalist and a convener, and I think it's been brought up before, but the facilitating and the mediating skills that you learn in school and being able to work in a team, that functions in a lot of different ways. It's me working with my team at USGBC, it's me working with a development company that doesn't understand why I'm making them do a certain something to get a point, that doesn't kind of make that connection as to why it's important. Me working with local government representatives to help them understand why we're promoting a certain approach, or to learn from them. I mean, we don't have all the answers, and so being able to apply those facilitation and mediating skills are important. Written and verbal communication, very important, and like I said, if you have the technical skills, that's also useful. That's what I interact with a lot, the end product of a lot of those technical skills, to see the drawings and plans that have come together. But do what you need to kind of stay well-rounded and stay connected to what you need to professionally. terms of work, I heard that I won't get cut off if I'm talking about job opportunities. Unfortunately, our organization doesn't have any openings right now specifically for, we don't really hire specifically for a planner to fill in this role. We do kind of fill with generalists, but there are opportunities to grow within the organization. I am looking for interns for the summer though, and we have some specific research that we'd like to do and just information gathering and collecting and managing that's specific to planning tasks, using GIS, using Excel, and manipulating information that would be relevant to what planners work with. So if you're interested in that, let me know. We don't have our process up and running quite yet for the summer, but I am looking for people that are looking for those types of opportunities. So.
Okay. So I think that one of the most exciting things, but also the most challenging thing about working in the World Bank is that we work in cities that don't have the luxury of the organization that we have in the US. So all of these things that you guys were describing, they sound really great. And where I work, they don't have the ability to do these things. And so my role is to think about what is the essence. So what is the essence of green design? And how can I try to bring that essence to a city like Hanoi or to Beijing, right? How can we think through mixed income housing in a city where they would never build an apartment building that had a mix of incomes in it? No matter how much subsidy you gave, people wouldn't even live there for free, right? So the wealthy people wouldn't live there for free. How do we do that? And so that's what an urban planner or an urban development specialist in the World Bank grapples with every day. So a little bit about the World Bank. We consider ourselves a knowledge bank. The Inter-American Development Bank, where this guy Claudio works, does as well. And what that means is that we're a bank because we lend money, but we're a knowledge bank because we lend the money and we give you knowledge. So in a way, you could think of it as if you went to get a mortgage for a house you wanted to build, and the person in Citibank said, all right, and I'm going to come and help you design your house, and to pick out the tile and the color of the paint and the type of roof that you'll have, etc. So we give that kind of technical assistance with our loans. All of our loans are to government. We can't actually loan to cities. The way that it works is that the national government will borrow and then give that money to the city. But our engagement is almost always with the city officials. And it really depends country by country whether that is a mayor or it's actually the governor of the state is in charge of the city, etc. There's all sorts of different arrangements that we deal with. We also do pure knowledge work in the sense of writing studies or coming up with new and interesting initiatives. And I have worked in both the lending and I'm working now in the knowledge. So in lending, I worked, when I started in the World Bank, I started working on Yemen, which, yeah, you don't usually think of Yemen when you think of cities, right? And like making a metropolis. But I worked there on several cities and in Egypt. And then I went and I lived in Brazil and I worked on Brazilian cities. And that was very different from Middle Eastern cities. And now that I'm back at headquarters, I'm in a unit, in a way, is kind of our research and development. So we get to think what is the future of urban growth and urbanism, and how can we start preparing to help our client cities get ready for this massive urbanization. This is where Tony Biggio, who is a new faculty member, he was also in that unit before, and actually I worked with him when I worked in the Middle East when I first joined the bank. So what I work on now is a topic that I heard kind of woven into many of the slams today, and that is resilience. So I lead something called the Resilient Cities Program. And basically that was launched in December. We're a little bit usually behind cutting edge. And my job is to try to formulate what the bank should be doing in terms of helping cities be more resilient. It's not that we've never thought about resilience. We lend about $2.5 billion a year for disaster response and adaptation to climate change. But what's new about this Resilient Cities program is that we're thinking more broadly about all the different shocks and stresses that a city could face and how we're going to help them. So we've come up with all of these different methodologies and ways of engagement and how to prioritize investments. And this year we're going to be rolling out this new approach in Kanta in Vietnam, in the south of Vietnam, and then in Karachi, Pakistan. And you know, with having a new program and the South Asia region, the city that they come up with for me to test out my resilience, choosing Karachi. That was a tough pill to swallow, is that the same thing? But it's going to be an exciting adventure. The World Bank is 10,000 people. Not everyone in DC, but a large portion of us here in DC. We're the largest private employer in DC. There are about, I think, 250 urban staff members, so urban development specialists or urban economists like myself. But a lot of people are working on cities because, you know, separate from urban development, we have urban transport, we have water and sanitation, we have solid waste management, et cetera, which all act inside the urban realm. We are always hiring. We have on our website, there's always a lot of jobs. Those are the formal staff jobs. Most people who are coming out of graduate school who want to work in the World Bank or in the Inter-American Development Bank get in through what are called short-term consultancies, which means that somebody could hire you for 10 days. It sounds really weird, but that's the norm. So you get paid by day. So they say, okay, I'm going to hire you for 10 days to write up a case study on XYZ. And then if you do that well, they'll say, okay, I'm going to hire you for 20 days. And I want you to do the same case study, but for 4 cities. And so on and so forth. You build up a relationship, you start to know all the lingo, and then when you apply for a job that's on the, you know, the website, people already know who you are, you know how to phrase it correctly, you know how to work the network. So what I'd encourage you to do if the World Bank or the IDB is a place that you want to work is to not necessarily look at that job board, but to look through the website and figure out what aspect of urban development you're really interested in, and then look for the people who have published on that, or who are in charge of a lending operation on that topic, and then just email them. Most of the people had to go through this process of trying to break into the system, and so they're very open to having a coffee with you, and especially you're at GW, it's right nearby. And I think that would be the best way to go about trying to break in.
My company's based on Washington, and so as other cities, as like
She got it? I didn't know. Great. I did. She got it. Yeah, I did. She